Now, if you're out there trying to figure out what you can get a friend or a loved one for the holidays, go to the video at YouTube and go to Merica F1 and check out our Ridge.com discounts. Ridge makes smart wallets that are great form and functionality. They're RFID safe and they just make wallets cool again. Check them out because Ridge goes where you go. Gotta get one. Welcome to Merica F1 as we do a recap of a penalized Qatar Grand Prix. There was more penalties in this Grand Prix than I've ever seen in my entire life. There was more penalties in this Grand Prix than any hockey game that's going on right now. I mean, in hockey, has a lot of penalties, and so does soccer. And this one had more. There was 7 penalties, and we're going to discuss it all here coming up with Scott at Merica F1.
Yeah, Merica F1. Merica F1. It's a golden run. Merica F1.
Now, Scott, this was, if it wasn't for the penalties, I don't even know if this race would have been that great. It was the penalties and 3 safety cars, a virtual safety car, all that combined made it a good race. But if you took all that away, it would have probably been pretty boring.
Yeah, I don't think the LaSalle circuit is a great racetrack for competitiveness. The drivers love it because it has a lot of medium and high-speed corners, which makes the F1 cars do what they're intended to do. That's all well and good. But you know what, as a race fan, give me tracks that allow lots of overtaking. Give me Las Vegas. Give me Monza. Give me Austria. Give me Spa. You can't overtake except one place on this whole track. And that was the place where Alex Albon's mirror fell off and they did nothing.
Well, let me go over all the penalties, and then you can just give me your take on these. So we got 7 race penalties.
This Lucky was 7. That was the only thing that was interesting.
This was the first race for Rui Marquez. He was a race director for this.
Second race, he actually did Vegas, where he was infamous for littering on the track.
Right. I saw that. I actually saw that, like over the little it was like not a banister, but it was like a metal barrier, and he kind of like had, and he just kind of put it over there and just kind of but apparently he did the directing for F1, F2, F1 Academy.
Correct.
Is that right? All in one day.
That is a horror show. And the reason that you never do that, the legendary race director, Charlie Whiting, who died in 2019, refused to ever do anything other than F1 on a given day. He would not do F1 and F2. And the reason that he gave, and this is the greatest racing director in the history of the sport, is one person cannot do it all. But here, MBS, who's fired every living human being at the FIA and everyone who's ever exposed.
Get out of here.
Misdeeds and corruption. And we'll go over his firings later.
Yeah.
Literally gutted the place of racing directors, fired Niels Wittich unexpectedly with 3 races to go in the season. Then when they're about to, and puts Rui, who is the F2 director, in F1. So then there's supposed to be a new F2 director, Janet Tam, right before the race at Qatar, her debut race. He fires her too. And so poor Rui has to literally do all 3 races on Sunday, even though he's basically a rookie at the F1 level. And, what does he do? He leaves a mirror out there in the braking zone of the only overtaking spot on the track where cars are going over it potentially at 200 miles an hour, where their drivers see it.
That was a huge mistake. As soon as I saw that mirror, and it was pretty big, you could see it easily on TV. I said, they need to call a safety car, come in a lap, just follow the safety car for 1 lap, go in, and then grab that mirror, and then resume the race.
Send it. Really simple. It's right. Send the cars through the pit lane, which clears the main straight, the pit straight. Send some marshal out there. It'll take all of 5 seconds to get the mirror up.
Because that ruined Carlos Sainz's race. He came in 6th. He was running. I think he was running ahead. He was in 3rd or 4th at that point. And it obviously, Lewis' race was Let's go through all the penalties. Okay, Ham
Yes,
got
sir.
a 5-second penalty for jumping the start.
He did, which he did.
I
Slammed
don't.
up.
He did, but I don't think he should have got penalized, and I'll tell you why.
Really?
If you gain an advantage, he lost 2 spots right off the bat.
It doesn't matter though.
Okay. Then they show a side by side. Guess who else?
Who else jumped it?
Lando Norris.
And they didn't penalize him.
They didn't penalize him. Okay.
Wow.
They showed it side by side. He did the exact same thing. No penalty. Okay. Then Hamilton got penalized again for speeding in the pit lane. I guess he pressed the wrong button in the pit lane limiter.
Yep.
So his penalty for that was a drive-through, which I thought was pretty harsh.
They are look, as you may know, I'm a big endurance racing fan. I love to drive GT cars on the racetrack. There's ones that use endurance racing. And what they're basically doing at Qatar is they're really starting to introduce endurance racing type penalties. Drive-through penalties, stop and goes are very common in endurance racing, but we really haven't seen them in Formula One for a number of years. And now we're seeing real death penalties that send you from the top of the grid to the bottom.
Like,
it's over.
Well, let's talk more about that in a second. Okay, who else? So Max got penalized before the race started. He went from first to second on the grid, right? Okay, Russell got a 5-second penalty for, I guess, he overtook during the safety car, and he also got 1 penalty point onto his license.
That's correct.
Norris got a 10-second stop and go penalty, which I thought was super harsh. I mean, that just killed his race right there. He was done.
You know,
He got 3.
He
got 3 penalty points to his license for that because it was a double yellow. But they kept the double yellow out, and then they stopped the double. It was strange. Okay, then Lawson got a 10-second penalty because he caused a collision with Bottas, and he got 2 penalty points. Albon got a 10-second penalty because he caused a collision with K-Mag, and he got 2 penalty points. And then Lance Stroll. Of course he got. Lance Stroll got a 10-second penalty for causing a collision with Albon, and then he also got 2 penalty points. Now break it on down, Scott.
And Max started the race with a 1-place grid penalty for going too slow in quali, and George.
And that was because of George Russell. I guess him and George were in the penalty box, or they were in the steward's room, and they discussed this. And this is what Max had to say about what went on in that room.
And I've never seen someone trying to screw someone over that hard. And that's, for me, I lost all respect.
Now we got Ted Kravitz. He also added a little bit of spice to this saga of it's like a soap opera.
The rumor is, and I think you'll find this when Drive to Survive airs in February, because they're certainly not going to leave this little snippet on the editing room floor, that on the driver's parade holding room, Max then confronted George, still seething, as we've said, uses that anger as motivation for his 1-place grid drop, and said something along the lines of, "You and your FIA mates, I hope you're happy with what you've done."
Now, I have a lot to say about that, but we will hit that after we make sure everybody remembers to like, subscribe, hit the bell notification so you can be informed when we have another episode up. Remember that Merica F1 is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, and we are on YouTube. And then for next season, we're going to be on Rumble also. So we're adding. And Scott, what do you have to say about what we just saw, what Max said, and about all these penalties?
Yeah, well, about what Max said, I knew that when George reported him, he was probably waking a sleeping lion. In terms of Max, really races with anger sometimes, and when you anger him, he will show you that he's right. And what he's also reported to say is that he came up to George and he said, "I'm going to pass you on the inside by the first turn, and you're never going to see it coming," which is exactly what he did. Now, he did that because he had a tire advantage. See, Mercedes, unfortunately, stupidly, didn't keep a new set of mediums around, and Max and Red Bull smartly had a new set of mediums.
And that's why George was complaining when they put those he was like, why'd you put those on? Why'd you put the hards on? Where are the mediums? And I guess he didn't have another pair.
They were running on the same tire at the start. The problem was George's were used and Max's were new. George got a very good jump on the start, but couldn't accelerate as quickly as Max because his tires were used. But as far as, look, I think the penalty on Max was bullshit because Max got backed up by Fernando. If you're going to penalize anybody, you penalize Fernando. I mean, the fact that they gave the penalty to Max was not fair because there was nothing Max could have done. I mean, Fernando slowed down and Max had to slow down. So I really don't think that was a proper penalty. I understand why Max is mad. But, no driver is as pure as a driven snow. And Max is the first one to report other drivers in the race when they do something that he knows is a rules violation that would give him an advantage. Case in point, reporting Lando Norris for immediately going past the double yellow flags, which led to the most devastating penalty in the race of all, because that was the death penalty for his race, dropping Lando from P2 to P, out of the points, and he struggled on new softs to come in P10, which basically has dramatically affected the Constructors' Championship to the point where now Ferrari's only going in 21 points behind in Abu Dhabi when they would have been more like, 40-something points behind or 30-something points behind.
Scott, I have a quick question, and I want your opinion on this. Do you think, when you're watching it on TV, and all the drivers are complaining about the other drivers, do you think that teams should be able to go and complain about these infringements or perceived infringements to the officials right then and then be able to get those people penalized? Because in no other sport can you do that. Basketball, you can't do it. Soccer, you can't do it. Baseball, you can't do it. No other sport can you be participating, complain to the ref, and then get a penalty on the opposition.
I don't have a big problem with it. If somebody actually committed a violation, there are cameras everywhere. The camera will see it. So I don't have a big problem, provided it doesn't delay the race. It's a big track. This isn't a basketball court. That's little where everyone can see. It's a massive track with, 4, 6, as much as 7 kilometers. And there's a lot of room and things to see that are easy to miss when you have when you have 20 cars going in a space that's that large. So no, I don't have a problem with it because you can verify whether it's true or not. Now let's talk about Lando's penalty.
Let's talk about it.
First, I really did think it was unfair. Nobody's gotten that since 2021 when Nikita Mazepin got it, and someone else whose name is suddenly escaping me. But okay,
wasn't Latifi, was it?
I think it actually was Latifi. So in any event, when I saw it the first time on TV, I just saw him go past a board that was just illuminated yellow at the last second. When I saw the replay in the in-car camera, he clearly went past double yellow flags. And then I looked at which, by the way, if you're trained as a racing driver or even any track driver with a street car, the first thing they teach you is you must look at all the flag stations when you're going, memorize where they are, be sure to look at them when you're going. And if you see a double yellow flag, that means there is imminent danger shortly ahead of you, and you need to slow down immediately. It's not a big one.
Double yellows, that usually means there's an official on the track or there's major debris on the track that you have to avoid. So you definitely have to slow down in the double yellows. Because what if there was an official on the track and you don't slow down?
And I looked at the telemetry. Then I looked at the telemetry. The telemetry shows that Max Verstappen was really there were 4 drivers that went past it when it was waving double yellow before they took it away. Max Verstappen goes past it, immediately lifts on the throttle and slams on the brakes. Huge reduction in speed. He's the only one of the 4 who acted the way you're actually supposed to act, textbook, which is the way I would have reacted because you're supposed to. Okay, next one goes by Lando Norris, wide open throttle, no brakes, as if there were no double yellows. Okay. That is an extraordinarily dangerous move on a racetrack. And when I saw the double yellows in the replay, I changed my mind and said the penalty was justified. Okay. Then the Ferrari boys went through, Charles and Carlos. They both did lift. Later than Max, they're not quite as quick as Max, perhaps on the drop, but they both lifted. Neither one of them braked, which they should have. But they both lifted and slowed down. The only one of them to go by that flag, wide open throttle, was Lando. And sure enough, he gained a significant amount of time on Max by doing that. But that's not why he got the penalty. He got the penalty because double yellow means there's imminent, serious danger somewhere on the track, shortly in front of you. It is a cardinal rule for any track driver. Double yellow is serious shit. And you must slow down. It's all on him. That's why he was stuck in the car for like 4 minutes when the track ended. Looked like he was crying. And probably took off his radio because when you saw him in the media room, his eyes were crying. And it was a catastrophic penalty, but it was actually the correct penalty given that it wasn't just a single yellow board, it was a double yellow flag, which is a lot more serious.
What do you think about all these 10-second penalties for causing collisions and stuff like that? Because usually they're like 5 seconds, and they weren't.
Yeah, they changed that about 3 or 4 races or 5 races ago because the thought was that the 5-second penalty for a collision wasn't severe enough and that it wasn't enough of a deterrent. Look, I think they were justified. I don't have a problem with those. Like Alex Albon, bless his heart, and I'm a big Albon fan, but that man was playing bumper cars with Magnussen to try to stay points.
Yeah.
He did wrong. I was shocked at how poorly he was at the aggressiveness and really how violative of the driving standards Alex was. And he's normally a clean racer, and he was not a clean racer. He was an angry racer because his race had gone so bad. He was doing what Magnussen is infamous for doing to Magnussen. He was Magnussening on Magnussen. He really was. And he was the guilty party. And I watched it for a couple laps. I said, damn, he's going to get a huge penalty.
Now,
yeah.
Talk about Liam Lawson and his penalty, because I think, and there he is right there, I don't think Liam should get the seat. From what I've been seeing so far, not only am I not impressed, but I think he's a little dangerous. He doesn't have a good peripheral vision at all.
He definitely races like K-Mag. He's aggressive. He's super aggressive, doesn't back down. He's tough. He's hungry. He looks like he's getting the seat. Everything I read, and we'll talk about this later. Checo's going bye-bye. After Abu Dhabi, which should have happened at the summer break.
Right, should have been.
They will not give Yuki a chance at the seat. I don't know.
Start it.
I don't know.
Start it.
Cultural.
Don't start it.
Or they don't like the fact that he had that big outburst against Ricardo at Bahrain, which was bad, which was really bad. But for whatever reason, they ain't giving Yuki the seat. They're going to give it to Liam Lawson, and they're going to give him a chance at the seat. Which we'll talk, Colapinto, they basically ruled out at Abu Dhabi. They did too many crashes. They basically, Horner came on the air and said, I want my drivers. I'm backing my drivers. As Isaac Hadjar did great in F2 over the weekend, which he did, as did Bortoletto. They were both fabulous in their races. As was Behrman, by the way, in the sprint race. Showed really good pace in the main race, but had a lousy quali.
Yeah,
but in any event,
the sprint race, didn't he? He won the sprint.
He was first on the sprint place grid because he qualified only 10th in the main race. So that puts you first in the sprint race because they have a reverse grid for the first 10 positions. You reverse the order of the quali for the feature race for the sprint race. But Ali got past and then took it right back and really ran away with the race because Ali is very fast. But then in the main race, they put him on an alternative strategy, and he eventually had the lead. The problem with the alternative strategy is if you don't get a safety car, you lose. So he was out of it.
Tires go off.
Well, going back to F1, Liam and Yuki are pretty close. Liam has some good races. Yuki has some good races. Yuki, I think, on track is a little less aggressive than Liam, even though Yuki's mouth is more aggressive. He's been prone to more outbursts, more hot radio. But his driving is a little less aggressive than Liam's. I don't know. Look, it doesn't matter. They are never giving Yuki that seat. It doesn't. Yuki could win Monaco. He could win Red Bull Ring. He could win Spa, and they wouldn't give him the seat.
Yuki says it's political, but do you think maybe they have, since they're leaving Honda and they're going with Ford next year, do you think that has something to do with it?
I think what it really has to do with is they don't feel people, some say it's racism, these guys are racist. No, I don't think so. I think they don't like his on-air anger, that he does have outbursts that are
Oh,
emotional.
like Max doesn't have on-air outbursts.
I know.
Right? I mean,
but-
it's so hypocritical because
know.
Max on the radio says,
Yeah.
I mean, he's F-bombs. He doesn't care. He'll tell his race director to go fuck off. He doesn't care.
Well, but they'll make a
And-
dispensation for the best driver in the game right now. That's why. I mean, he can take a dog of a car and put it on the podium, and no one else, or almost nobody, can right now. I mean, some of the great drivers are getting older, and no one has yet to emerge. And the younger drivers is a challenge.
One thing I wanted to say about Supermax, there he is he was pretty hypocritical. He said, first he gave Hamilton a great compliment, and he said, he thought, well, it's probably, the guy's probably checked out, the car's not that good. If they gave him a good car, he'd be right up there. You could see it.
Which I think is true. I think he has checked out, and I think the car sucks.
The car's dog, because this is the first time I ever heard him say, hey, let's just retire the car.
I think he's mentally checked out.
And
He did that once before, actually, last year. Sorry.
To retire the car?
Yes, he did that once before, and they made him stop. He actually did that once last season. When they were having a tough time last season, he did the same thing.
Now, the one thing that Max said also is that he said he would have won in 2021 with Lewis's car. And then he also criticized George by saying, you're FIA buddies. He just forgot that Michael Massey gave him the championship of 2021. He benefited from the FIA. Also, that Lewis actually won the championship because he won the last 4 races. He had to win 3 in a row just to get it tied. He did that. He won all 3, and he actually won that race too if it wasn't for Michael Massey. So if anybody's been a benefit of the FIA, it's been one Max, Super Max Verstappen.
I don't think what I really think is going on is Max, who, like I said, I will tell you now, he's the best driver currently on the grid. He does not like being challenged. And he is used to people backing down. He's sort of like Senna in that if you don't get out of my way, I will punt you off the track, or Schumacher. These are champions who would do whatever they needed to do to win. And he's got that attitude where very few drivers challenge him anymore. They get out of the way. Lando could have passed him after the restart and wimped out again. And George is a different animal. George Russell is a tough guy. He will fight you. He's extraordinarily ambitious. He doesn't really like Max. He and Max had a big fight last year in Baku. I think Max called him a dickhead after it when they came together. They don't like each other. So if George gets a competitive car next year from Merck, there could be a really nasty fight between the two of them. And, Max knows if a Merck driver gets a top car, they're not going to back down and they're going to fight him hard. And like I said, he's used to people sort of now hero worshiping and backing down because he is the best, more skilled driver on the grid. And frankly, I don't know if George gets a championship car, if George can beat Max in an even fight.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't think. I think he has the qualifying pace for sure. He's Mr. Saturday. But in the race, I don't think look, even in this race, he was on pole, man. And 5 seconds later, he's 3rd place.
They really screwed him on tires. I mean, both Lando and Max went out with new mediums, and he didn't have them. And he was at a huge tire disadvantage. And it was not good strategy on Mercedes' part. Sorry, Mercedes, but your guy gets pole. You got to think about your tire usage during the quality, during the practices. To send the guy out on old tires, not very good. Terrible use of tires. So we don't know what he would have done. He normally doesn't lose the lead.
Do you have a list of all the people that have been let go by the FIA?
Yeah, look, and this is something I want to talk about just for a minute.
Go ahead.
I think that the reign of terror of MBS has really reached the point in the FIA where it is now dangerous and it is putting drivers' lives at risk. It's put the integrity of the sport at risk for a long time, the corruption and the mass firings. But now we're getting to the point where he's cutting so deeply to the bone that driver safety is now at risk. And we saw that in the race. Somebody could have run over that mirror or the shards and gone out of control at 200 miles an hour right into the frigging wall. And it's a situation that was created by mass turnover in the race director position by Mohammed bin Sulayem and his reign of terror. Oh, yeah. Firings, it's unbelievable. This literally is like the French Revolution and Robespierre is marching people to the guillotine. Look at the list in the last year. The sporting director, Stephen Nilsson, December 2023. The head of the FIA Commission for Women, Deborah Meyer, December 2023. The lead engineer, Tim Goss, January 2024. The CEO of the FIA, Natalie Robin, May 2024. The director of communications, Lux Skipper, October 24. The Secretary General of Mobility, October 24. And now we get to some safety ones that actually matter for driver safety. Niels Wittich, the race director, November 24, fired without notice. And then the FIA, led by MBS, lied and said he stepped down voluntarily, to which he immediately told the media, I was fired. So a very super experienced race director, gone. Then, as we said earlier, they then sent the inexperienced in F1, F2 race director to become the race director of F1. And then, his replacement, Janet Tam, who's highly regarded, right before she's about to take over F2, gets fired too, right before the race. So poor, poor Rui Marquez has to be the race director on Qatar for all of the races on the same day, and he couldn't do it. And Charlie Whiting couldn't do it. The best race director in the history of F1 couldn't do it, and said it's dangerous, basically. But this is what MBS has done.
I also heard that Rudy, he had so much to do that day that he even fell asleep for a second or two. That somebody had to come by and shake him to wake him up because he was just overly tired.
Look, any race director who was awake, seeing that mirror hitting like a time bomb in the braking zone of the main straight, the only overtaking zone on the entire track, because it's impossible to overtake almost in all those tight corners, which are basically the rest of the track, would have immediately called a safety car, gotten those cars in the pit lane so they're out of the main straight, and cleared that time bomb off the track. By the way,
it cost Sainz probably a podium. It cost Lewis, he even with all the penalties that he got, he still finished 12th. Without that last tire being blown out, he probably would have been in the points, probably got 8th or 7th. Yes. Also, I was screaming. When I saw that mirror, I was screaming at the TV, get that off of there. What are you doing? Because all it's going to take is somebody to go. I'm pretty sure all of their race engineers told them that it was there. But look what happened. As soon as the blue flag came out, they moved over, ran right over the mirror, exploded into a bunch of chars, and then here comes blowout. And like you said, somebody can really been hurt.
And look, as a driver on a racetrack, you see a blue flag, you don't move over, you're in trouble. So it's not like Valtteri had much of a choice but to move to the side to allow himself to be overtaken. Correct. By the way, I didn't even go over the financial people that MBS has fired.
Oh, let's hear.
He fired, as you may have heard, it's been reported in the media that he refused to submit receipts for his personal expenses. And as a result, he gave up his $1.5 million personal expense fund and transformed it into a slush fund for international automobile clubs who next year get to vote on him as to whether he should be reelected or not. And 2 of the 4 members of the audit committee questioned the ethics of doing that as potentially unethical, given that it's essentially a slush fund for reelection from FIA money for the president. And that was Tom Purvis, whose name I'm sure you've heard of. He was the former CEO of BMW and Rolls-Royce, and the head of the World Bank, Bertram Burgay. They were 2 of the 4 members of the audit committee, volunteers, incorruptibles. And after that happened, guess what?
Fired.
And also fired the FIA's chief compliance officer, whose job it was to monitor the ethics compliance of none other than MBS. And after he challenged MBS in things like his alleged interference with the Alonso penalty in the Saudi Arabian race, when Alonso got that penalty because Aston Martin touched his car under 5 seconds, and he got a penalty for it. The penalty was miraculously overturned. And it was then later alleged that MBS interceded on behalf of Aramco, the title sponsor to Aston Martin. And, we know MBS is from Saudi Arabia, and Aramco is the official state oil company. And he was investigated, and it was apparently brought by the chief ethics officer or the chief compliance officer. But of course, he was found not guilty by the body that he runs, because if you oppose him or find him guilty of anything, you're fired too. But then he fired the the compliance officer. And finally, the FIA governing documents say that only the FIA Senate can fire the chief compliance officer, that he's not subject to the oversight of the FIA president. Somehow he got fired without a vote of the FIA Senate. So you literally have an autocratic regime.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, and it smells to high heaven that the corruption, not only is it obvious to everybody watching, but all those names that you stated, that's a lot of people in 1 year. And it's all within the last couple months.
And he also fired Tim Mayer, who was the head of stewards, volunteer for the last 15 years. He's the son of McLaren's co-founder. And he was fired after 15 years of volunteer service by text message from MBS's assistants after 15 years.
That's disgusting, actually. Didn't even have the professionalism to call him into the office or call him on the phone. He sent a text message.
But most cowards don't. Most dictators, most bullies, most autocrats have no balls. They use underlings and lackeys to do their dirty work for them. You find that in the workplace too. Yeah. You find that in corporate America too.
Now,
the way weak people operate.
What?
Yep.
Let's give Max his 5 minutes of fun, because this guy really, he said that he's going to pass George, and he did. And not only did he do that, but he controlled the race, even through all the safety cars, the virtual safety cars. When he got ahead, there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to win that race.
Me neither.
None. No doubt at all.
No, me neither. And I knew, and we actually put something on our experiences page, basically has the night before, has George Russell unleashed Mad Max. And is that going to motivate? We put a poll. Is it going to motivate Max to crush George? And 92% of the respondents said yes. And I'll admit to you, I voted yes too, because it was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. Now, I don't blame George for trying to get a penalty on Max, because Max reports drivers all the time. And
right, you heard him.
Lando reported, because you may remember another race after Max congratulated Lando and waved at him and then went by him. Lando immediately reported Max for speeding, for overtaking when you're not allowed to. So no one's as pure as driven snow. It's just Max doesn't like to be challenged. And I did think the penalty was nonsense.
Well, now let's talk about Jack Doohan and what's going on with that. Like, Ocon's out, right? And now when you're watching the post-race show, the head of Alpine didn't even know that Ocon had said that he wasn't going to be in the next race. He was saying, like, well, I have to find out. Like, it was news to him.
Yep.
You think he was being sly, or did he really not know?
Look, we all know who's calling the shots on contracts and personnel decisions at Alpine. Flavio Briatore. Oliver Oaks' job is to make the team fast. And, they've been doing pretty well since he's taken over.
Gasly would have Gasly get fifth. Yeah, Gasly got fifth. Yeah.
And now they're 5 points ahead. Alpine is 5 points ahead of Haas for P6 in Constructors, and is looking good to win it. But, look, Oliver Oaks' job is very analogous, in my opinion, to Andrea Stella's job at McLaren. Stay out of the politics. Stay out of all of that stuff. Let Zach handle it. And Flavio is doing the Zach Brown role at McLaren. No, look, the bottom line is Flavio Briatore manages Jack Doohan. Flavio Briatore wanted Jack Doohan to get some experience this year. And Alpine didn't have to let Esteban Ocon test with Haas, just like Mercedes did not allow Lewis Hamilton to test with Ferrari. So they didn't have to let him. That was the price that Briatore dreamed up of the test. Originally, that wasn't in the cards. He was going to test. It was no problem. And that was that. That was what the news reports were. But suddenly, a new condition came up, and basically they probably told him, I gather, we thought we've reconsidered and we're not going to let you test if you stay in the car. And they have the right to do that. They didn't have to let him test. It was unfortunate. And frankly, Ocon, after so many years of good service, the only victory Alpine has gotten in its newest incarnation, a P2 here, a P3 at Monaco last year. They should have given him a better send-off. And we're seeing a season of very classless send-offs mid-season by teams like, VCarb and Red Bull basically did to Daniel Ricciardo with no send-off at all. No goodbye. And frankly, for a driver who did so much for the team, they should have given him a send-off. I understand why they did what they did. But again, the same thing they did with Ricciardo, basically out the back door, goodbye, you're off the team. Not even a recognition that he ever did anything for the team. It's like he never.
I wonder what, because I know on Lewis's car, on this upcoming, they're going to have 150 fans' names written on the car. I even put in for that. I was like, yeah, why not? I'll put
I did too.
Yeah,
I love Lewis. I like Lewis. Yeah, I love Lewis.
So somebody, I guess I read somebody who had showed the letter that they got, and that their name's going to be on that, and I thought that was awesome. But what do you expect for the send off for Lewis? Do you expect something big this coming week, or are they gonna
Yeah, I mean, Toto does PR better than most in terms of he's much smoother and more caring about public appearances, and he will do a first class, classy send off. He's sending him around to all the sponsors for a send-off. No, he will, whatever disputes they've had the last few about the car not being great, he's not an idiot. Lewis is an icon in the sport. He's not a midfield driver. He's a 7-time champion, should have been an 8-time champion, but for Michael Masi. He's done tremendous things for the brand. There is no way, and frankly, Mercedes want to keep goodwill with the tens of millions of Lewis fans and not lose them all to Ferrari forever.
Here's the thing, and I'll tell you, look at that transformation. He's already lost a lot of the they call them TeamLH fans. You can see it all over X, formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
All over. Like, people cannot wait until this last race is over. They are done with Mercedes. And you are going to see the biggest change in social media in F1 from Mercedes-Benz following to Ferrari following than you've ever seen since all the teams are now on social media. Instagram, Facebook, X accounts, they're all going to Ferrari. And a lot of people saying they'll never look at Mercedes the same way again after these last couple races.
There's already a lot of Tifosi. It's going to make the ranks of the Tifosi even much, much bigger. Unfortunately, for somebody like me who likes to go to the Paddock Club at least a few times a season, from what I've seen in the advance sheets, it will have a corresponding effect on the pricing of the Formula One Club.
The prices are going to go up.
As opposed to the price of the Silver Arrows Lounge, which probably won't be quite as expensive without a 7-time champion in there.
No, it's George and a young kid called Kimi Antonelli, and who's going to want to. And what Max had to say just puts on top of all the things that people already had thought about George, that were already TeamLH fans. They already thought he was kind of a backstabbing, kind of a conniver, kind of a guy who will smile in front of the camera and say all the right things, but then behind the scenes, and that's what Max alluded to, is pretty cutthroat and pretty unfriendly. And to Max's, what he had to say, he doesn't want anything to do with George at all.
Yeah, I don't know what they all report each other. I mean, it's a bit hypocritical because he's reported on Lando, Lando's reported on Max. They all report on each other whenever they see an infraction because it gives them an advantage. My take on racing drivers is there are no friends when the visor goes down. You are enemies with everyone on the track. Even Lando says, "I hate everybody when I'm in the car." And
what do you have to say about Perez being out of the seat? Supposedly, that's what the rumors are. It's been reported in a number of magazines and ESPN. That's pretty big. ESPN says he's out after. What do you think?
I think, look, as a person, he's the nicest guy you'll ever want to meet. I think he had major contributions to the team. He was instrumental in Max's 2021 championship and, frankly, slowing Lewis down, backing him up so that he couldn't pit when the last safety car came out without losing track position. Without that, Max wouldn't have been champion. So he has had, he had 5 wins. He's done yeoman's work. But look, Father Time waits for nobody. Time tears everything down.
Yeah.
Everything. Time ends everything. None of us can evade Father Time. Death and taxes, they say, the only 2 things in inevitable in life. And unfortunately, racing drivers' abilities decline at different rates. And you saw a decline about this age with Daniel Ricciardo, and you're seeing it with Checo. Whereas some other drivers like Fernando and Lewis can keep their race pace into a much older age. Maybe not the quali pace, because that's all reflexes, but the race pace. But look, Checo cost Red Bull P2 and P3 in constructors and cost every single employee at Milton Keynes their constructors bonuses. Red Bull should be winning constructors. And
they should. If Checo would have just scored points, I mean, a lot of Grand Prix, he didn't even score any points. He didn't even score 1 point.
Yeah, I mean, since the summer break, I don't think he's been on the podium.
No, he hasn't. But you would expect if that car, let's say in the beginning of the season, it was the number 1 car, no doubt about it.
Yes, through China.
Okay, and then it was probably number 2 some days, number 3 some days, and then that's all Max. Anytime that car wins, it's all Max.
Yeah.
But you would figure he shouldn't be he should be about 2 to 3 places off. So if Max is in first, maybe he should get a podium or he should be 4th. If Max gets 2nd, maybe he should be 5th or he should get 6th.
Like Lewis Belcher.
Yeah, but he's getting like 12th, 11th, 10th. That's just not good enough. That's just not good enough.
No, I mean, the only people who you see, really want him to stay, are just super loyal to him and, can't stand to have somebody not there from their country. And you know what? Put Pato O'Ward in F1. I love Pato O'Ward. Fastest hands in F1. Incredible. Fastest hands in Indy. What an incredible driver Pato is. I would love to see Pato in F1. I really would. I'm just saying that. He's a great.
I mean, that's not going to happen next year, though.
No. And it's not going to happen with Andretti because Andretti is putting Colton Herta in that seat next to probably either Valtteri or Ricciardo, and probably Valtteri, unless it's for marketing reasons, in which case maybe Ricciardo. But
one great story that came out of Penalty Fest at Qatar was Zhou Guanyu finally scoring points for the Sauber team, who hasn't scored or kicked Sauber, F1, Visa, whatever.
It's a steak,
kick. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. They haven't scored any points all season, and then he scores 2. He gets 4 points out of 8th.
He gets P8, not even a P10 or a P9. He gets a P8.
And Valtteri had 11th, and if it wasn't for that little incident, he probably would have scored a point too. I mean, it's not just because I think they had a new front wing, and they've been developing the car somewhat, and
the car's better.
That what a great send off for him. If that was his swan song in F1, what a way to go out.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's not going to score points in Abu Dhabi. That's a traditional track. It's highly likely the main teams will be scoring in Abu Dhabi, where they're very familiar with it. Yes, he's not. I don't foresee Zhou coming back to F1.
No,
in a race driver role. Too many P20s and P19s and getting crushed by Valtteri in races. I don't see it happening. This is really his send off. I think he knows it, and it was a great way to go out with a P8. And driver of the day, I voted for him. I mean, the guy's been in
Yeah.
P20, suddenly he's P8, and he
Yeah.
performed great. He was a different driver this whole race weekend. I voted for him. And I've never voted before him in the entire 3 years he's been, but he earned it. It was a really great send-off. He did a fabulous job. He was on the pace, fought very hard, clean race. The funny part about Zhou is he's a very safe pair of hands. He's not a crash-prone driver, and he'll make Ferrari, if they pick him, a great reserve driver, because you can give him the car, and he's probably not going to crash or destroy your car because he's not a crashing driver. He's just not that fast.
Yeah, he's just not that fast. And I don't know, because as the reserve driver, you're doing all the simulations. And I don't know if you want a guy who's not that fast doing the sims, because you're going to have Charles and Lewis there, and they're going to be like, come on, man, is this the best? Like, this sim, come on, I'll beat this with my eyes closed. So I don't know about that one.
Well, they want somebody with F1 experience in there. And it's not like Arthur Leclerc was very fast in F2. He was very slow.
No.
And he's a test and development driver. And Antonio Fuoco is fast in WEC, very fast in WEC. We'll see in FP1 in Abu Dhabi how fast he actually is in the Ferrari.
But here, I'm going to go out on a limb. I don't know if Zhou brings money to be the reserve driver. I don't know.
He does.
So, but if I needed a reserve driver, I'd bring K-Mag in, because he's going to be fast.
He's fast.
And you can trust K-Mag, in a situation. I think I'd bring K-Mag if you want to keep him on the grid. I don't think he's going to get a seat in 26. He doesn't want. What do you think he's going to do?
He's going to WEC. He's going to be with WRT.
Okay.
BMW hypercars in WEC. And as you know, Kevin was going to drive in endurance racing before he got the call up, and he was getting Indian car test, but he was confirmed in endurance racing, which is where Fernando will probably go when he stops racing. He'll be a consultant for Aston Martin, and he'll continue in endurance racing. It's where Max is going to go when he retires. A lot of them just love it, and that's where K-Mag is going. But I think what happens is, if Ferrari has a call up, if Lewis or Charles gets sick, Ollie Behrman's going to be in the seat, and Zhou or whoever has a Ferrari role will go into Haas.
George. That makes great sense right there. That's what I would do, because Ollie's already been in the Ferrari. He's not going to crash it, and he's pretty fast, and he's very confident. That would be the way to go. Now, what do you have to say about all these DNFs? This was the most DNFs I think we had all season, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 DNFs. So Ocon, Colapinto, Stroll, Perez, Hulkenberg, which I was surprised of, all DNF. And then scoring points. So there wasn't that many places. We had Lawson in 14th place. We had Yuki in 13th.
Car was terrible.
We had Ham in 12th. We had Bottas in 11th. Norris scoring in 10th, obviously, because his drive-through and stop and go.
Worse.
You had Magnussen in 9th. You had Zhou in 8th. You had Alonso, who actually looked pretty good out there.
One of his best drivers of the year in a bad year.
In a really bad year. In 7th. Carlos Sainz, who got screwed over with his blowout, coming in 6th. Gasly, who's been pretty fast in racing. He's been fast in qualifying.
Gasly is Fastly.
You know what? Out of all the drives and out of all the teams this year who's made the most progress, you would have to say it's Alpine, because if you looked at where Alpine was in the beginning of the year, their car literally 20 to 30 pounds overweight.
Yeah.
And to today, with them going 2nd and 3rd week before last, and now in 5th for Gasly, and they've been scoring in the top 10. Well, Gasly has, because Ocon has not. But quite frequently, what a comeback story from literally the worst car on the grid to actually, scoring some meaningful points.
Flavio Briatore gets results. You may not like how he gets results, but he gets results. And what really happened is the parent Renault got sick of the team being a P20 merchant, P19 merchant, and they brought in somebody of very questionable reputation and ethics who has a reputation for winning. And he does. And I don't know what he's doing, but the guy, since he got in, he brought in Oliver Oakes. And, the team is suddenly doing well again. And it was not. Alpine's always had a pretty good aero department. We know the engine is a basket case. But their aero department, they clearly got the weight out. And their aero department has always been great with upgrades over the years. If they had a strong engine, once this team gets a Merc engine, if it's not sold off, it could be really competitive. I wouldn't rule them out to be fighting with McLaren and Mercedes once they have the Merc engine. Mercedes may regret this because their aero group is very good. So I'm not really surprised that they're doing well. And Gasly is a good driver. He'll never go back to Red Bull because they don't like him there. They thought he was a prima donna. But he's a good driver, and he's a fast driver. He now has in the last 2 races, he's been in the top 5 positions 2 races in a row. And because of that, because of Ocon's wonderful P2, now they suddenly jumped up from nothing, from 9th in constructors to 6th, and now they're 5 points ahead of Haas.
And it looks like, considering what next week is, looks like they'll probably sew it up.
They're putting Jack Doohan in the car, which is a risk. He has a big opportunity to do well, that's for sure, on a track that, by the way, he's very good at this track. He's had success in the past.
And they're going to give him the upgrades that they didn't give to Ocon, because Ocon's been complaining that the car is not the same. He's been complaining about, oversteer. He's been complaining that the car is a dog, and how come Gasly has the good car, but he knows he's leaving. And there's also a shot of him talking to Lewis in the paddock, with them both talking about going. I'm pretty sure Lewis is talking to him about, well, you're going to a different team. They're treating me the same way. Don't worry about that. Just put this stuff aside and start focusing on next year. I'm pretty sure he gave him that advice. But I wouldn't be surprised if they give Doohan a great enough car to score points.
Well, he is good at that track. Abu Dhabi, unlike a number of the tracks that they go to in the last part of the year, is a track that F2 goes to every year, usually to close out their championship. And people and lots of other motorsports race on it. It's a classic track, and he has been on that track a number of times. He is quite familiar with it. He's raced on it and done well on it. So we'll see. I mean, it's a good opportunity for him. By the way, about the DNFs, 3 of them were from a pinball collision on the first lap, where really Ocon, I think, sort of hit Nico Hülkenberg, who rarely crashes out, who then, unfortunately, the 2 of them pinballed into Franco Colapinto, who was trying to overtake them both on the outside. And 3 of them were out.
I'm
tragic.
I feel so bad for Franco, because it looked like he was the hottest property since sliced bread for a second. And then he's had 3 pretty bad races in a row. And he went from probably going to Red Bull, definitely going to be in the RB, to, well, hey, man, hopefully you can get a job as a reserve somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, certainly some of the comments that the Red Bull leadership made were very negative. That we've seen him racing and we've seen him crashing a lot. So they ruled him out. They talked about how great their own drivers were. And yeah, I mean, look, the danger when you come in as a rookie in the middle of a season, especially for a few races, is you're racing in a bunch of tracks where you've never been before, without the training that you would even get if you started in the beginning of the year. He did have some really amazing races in the beginning, but the second half has been not good. I don't blame him at all for what happened in Qatar. The problem is he really needed a good result to erase, what were really 2 very, very poor showings, especially in Brazil. The last 2 races were just not good.
Now, if he comes back this next race, and he scores some points, and he out-qualifies Albon again, and he scores some points, what do you think his chances are of at least getting that RB seat next year?
I think they're giving it to Isaac Hadjar. I think the decision's been made. I think Hadjar performed very well in Qatar. I think that was very important to the team. I think the team was waiting to speak until they saw how he did, because there was a very large break in F2, as you know, from the summer, from Monza basically until now. And so they've been racing for 2.5 months. And they saw how he performed, and he was fierce and, fighting, which they love about him, and yelling, and I don't think he has any chance. I like the guy very much, but the words from the Red Bull leadership were very clear. They are going to give Hadjar that seat. They're going to move out Checo. They're probably going to bump Lawson into that seat, and Hadjar will become Yuki's teammate. I do not see Franco getting a place on the grid. There was talk about Alpine maybe taking him over Doohan, but I don't see that happening either.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anymore. It's sad that Red Bull won't take Carlos Sainz because I know it's 100% it's
Insane.
Josh, and he doesn't like Carlos Sainz Sr. and they butt heads, and so he doesn't want that. But I think Carlos Sainz in the Red Bull will be the pick to do. I know they're not going to do it because then now, you're going to give Max some real good competition. And there's something to be said, and all the people say it. Max hasn't really had a teammate to really prove how great he is like these other champions have.
Yep.
And it's the truth. There's really the proof's in the pudding.
Oh.
You could get Carlos Sainz because he has an out clause in his contract to go to Williams that he could go to Red Bull, he could go to Mercedes, or he could go back to Ferrari. It's in the contract.
No,
so they won't do it. So Liam Lawson's going to get, Max will destroy that kid. It's going to be ugly.
Look, Lewis,
it's going to be ugly.
Lewis, who was in the other cockpit when Lewis was a rookie? Fernando, and he beat him. Lewis has had Jenson Button as a teammate. He's had Nico Rosberg as a teammate. He's had George Russell, who's a lot better than any of Max's teammates are. He's had Valtteri Bottas, much better than any of Max's teammates are, over 100 consecutive Q3 appearances, 10 wins of his own. Max has never had a really great teammate, except for Carlos Sainz for a few races at Toro Rosso, and Daniel Ricciardo during his prime beat him the first year and came close to him the second year. But since then, in his prime, he's had nobody who could compete with him. But look, I think he's still the best driver on the grid anyway, but clearly he's got a first driver clause in his contract. He has to have a veto power. And it's pretty clear that right now, given how great his own driving ability is, it's really being run more like Max Verstappen racing than Red Bull racing. Because if it was being run like Red Bull racing, Carlos Sainz would have that seat. It's crazy. It is a crime against the sport, and it's a crime against the team and the fans that Carlos Sainz, who's certainly among the top 5 or 6 drivers in the sport, is going to Williams, which is horrific right now, and not going to Red Bull. It is a waste of talent. And frankly, it's really against the interest of Red Bull as a team overall. It may be in his interest, but it's not in the team's interest.
Because 100% they're not going to win the Constructors next year with Liam Lawson. I know I'm getting down on Liam Lawson, but I'm just watching what I see on the screen. The guy, I don't know if he's even going to be better than Checo. I really don't. I really don't.
You know what? I hope he is, because I like him personally. I met him. He's very down-to-earth, charming guy. A lot of fun, actually in person. I hope he does well.
I hope all of them do well. I always wish the best for him, but I just don't see it when there's other people you could get.
Look, they had a chance to take one of, I'd say, the 5 or 6 best drivers in the sport at the peak of his career, the peak of his abilities, and they sent him walking. They kicked him. Who was their academy trainee? Was a Red Bull junior. He was trained by them.
Right.
For goodness sakes, he's not a stranger.
So
they trained him. They brought him up.
Who wins this constructor title next week? Ferrari or McLaren? What's your prediction?
My heart says Ferrari. I love Ferrari. Forza Ferrari. My head says probably McLaren. And the reason I say that is because
they're down by 21 points.
21 points, which is a big margin.
Big margin.
Basically, it means we need a Scuderia Ferrari Uno Due, and we need one McLaren to do badly. Is it possible? Yes. Is it probable on a track that Lando and Oscar both know like the back of their hands? No. It's not probable. It can happen, and I hope it does, because frankly, the poor racecraft, the poor race management, the poor strategy, McLaren deserves to lose constructors.
They do.
And
They
Ferrari,
really do deserve to lose because they haven't been on the ball at all.
no.
Not at all. All right, so another one. Who gets second place in the driver's title? Will it be Charles or Lando?
Forza Charles.
All right.
Charles did it at Abu Dhabi. Didn't he? He was the vice champion.
So for that to happen,
Years ago.
he
Against
would have to he'd have to be 2 places ahead of Lando. So he'd have to win, and then Lando would have to be third, right?
I think it's possible that could happen. Max is going to be in the mix. George Russell may very well be in the mix. Carlos could be in the mix. I think it could happen.
All right. What about 6th place? Will it be Haas, Alpine, or that RB team?
RB is like way there. There's a significant points gap there. So I don't think that they may need like 14 or 15 points. So I don't see them recovering. I mean, yeah, what is it? RB is on 46 points. Alpine is on 59. 15-point gap from a highly unlikely. It's not going to be a rain race in Abu Dhabi. So they're out. Let's see. I think Haas is going to pull it out. I think their car is going to be good, and they're fighting with 2 super experienced drivers. This is no cut on Alpine, but Alpine's going to have 1 experienced driver and 1 rookie, and who's doing his first race in F1 with such high stakes. And I really like Jack doing, but that's a lot to ask of somebody on their first race. If Jack can pull it off, he's going to start off as a rock star.
I'm going to go with Lando's going to finish second in the Drivers' Championship. I'm going to go with Alpine to finish in 6th place. And the reason why is you're going to be surprised. They're going to actually give Doohan the upgraded car, just like Gasly has, and he's going to drive it to at least 9th place. And that's all he's going to need to do. 9th
That would be amazing.
That's my prediction.
If he doesn't, he will be starting off as a rock star on the team. That would be great for him.
Yeah, because he's been there for like 20 million years just waiting his chance. Waiting, and he's finally going to get it. And on that note, it's going to be a great last race of the season. I can't wait till it happens. I can't wait until next season, because next season with all the rookies, Lewis and Red, and all the cars at the front, they're going to be competing. It's going to be a 4-team race for the constructors and maybe driver's title next year. I cannot wait.
Sherm, I was certainly told at the Vegas race from people with personal knowledge that Kimi Antonelli's test data is off the charts.
And as long as he doesn't crash the car, I hope he waxes the floor with George Russell. And then I could like Mercedes again, because I like Kimi. I had the opportunity. Did we see him in Silverstone? I think we got a passerby with him.
Everyone
in Silverstone, and he looks like a teenager. I mean, he's a teenager, but I loathe what they've done to my guy Lewis Hamilton so much this year that I'm gonna root for Kimi Antonelli next year. I know he's probably not gonna beat George as a rookie, but stranger things have happened. Look at what Lewis did. So we never know. So on that note, everybody out there, keep on racing, everybody.